Mandalorians were the warlike people that aimed to conquer the galaxy time and time again, but never succeeded. But what would have happened if the Mandalorians actually took over, and what would the galaxy look like? For this theory, we're going to say an event similar to the Mandalorian Wars occurs before the Clone Wars. A leader, similar to Mandalore the Ultimate, using an army of Neo-Crusaders, manages to push into Republic space. At this point, there's no Republic army and no large CIS one. For this reason, the Mandalorians would sweep through the entire galaxy and take control of everything. So, what happens? The Mandalorians will begin tearing the galaxy to shreds. They would assimilate all the companies, factories and land, and they'd become owned by this new Mandalorian government. All worlds that were conquered by the Mandalorians will be given a choice to either join the Crusaders or become slaves to the Mandalorian Empire. This means there would be a huge workforce that would be dedicated to building up the Mandalorian war machine, as well as a huge portion of the galaxy that would now be warriors. But once the war is over and the galaxy is conquered, it can't function on warriors alone. Now, what the Mandalorians decide to do from here is going to be an issue. Without something to fight or something to conquer, they seize up. A huge military and war is incredibly expensive, and their culture isn't viable without an enemy to attack and no major source of income for that new regime. The Mandalorians can't simply change their culture and start trying to rule peacefully as well. It goes against everything that they believe. Instead, what I'm going to propose they do with their newly conquered galaxy is continue to build up their military. They'd likely appoint planetary governors to different worlds and systems. These would oversee the huge industrial programs such as building ships, weapons and armor using their massive slave labor forces. As well as this, the countless captured scientists would be forced to work together, which would result in a vastly advancing military. What they decide to do from here is use that huge military and countless Neo-Crusaders conscripted, and they're gonna begin expanding. They spread into the unknown regions, landing on new worlds and systems. From here, they take over and assimilate all the resources, crops, metals, factories, etc., and contribute them to their cause. Meanwhile, new aliens from distant undiscovered worlds would either be conscripted into their ranks or forced to slave away in their factories making further weapons and farming the land to feed their troops on the front line. As the Mandalorians continue to sweep into the unknown regions, they grow in strength more and more. However, it's inevitable that they would eventually run into the Yuuzhan Vong. Now, as we know, the Yuuzhan Vong were a deadly foe for the Empire and New Republic, and they'd planned their invasion for a long time. But imagine, a few decades before the Yuuzhan Vong were prepared for the war, they're taken by surprise by a galaxy's worth of Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders under a strong Mandalore. Their living world's been invaded and scourged. Now, in my opinion, the Mandalorians, backed by a galaxy of slaves and using the brutal, tenacious tactics that they did in the past, would be victorious. They would then conscript the Vong into their armies, and then even take their organic technology. This would completely revolutionize the Mandalorian military, making it even more dynamic. Now, this sounds great. The Mandalorians would be colonizing worlds and growing in strength over time. However, there are some issues. It's essential the Mandalorians have more fruitful territory to take. If while spreading across the unknown regions, they come across uninhabited or barren worlds, then their military is going to start to seize up again. Without constantly feeding their empire new resources and people, then the Mandalorian conscripts from conquered worlds, who had joined on the promise of riches and glory, would feel discontent. And for this reason, it's very likely they'd begin to rebel. They'd likely start infighting between the different clans as resources become scarce. Now, traditionally, a Mandalore would be the only one able to keep peace between the clans. However, if their huge infrastructure started to collapse, it would only be natural that others would begin to challenge their rule. And as history tells us, power plays between powerful leaders likely end in suffering of the many. If different clans went to war over the title of Mandalore, then countless beings would be caught up in the crossfire. Ultimately, I believe that the Mandalorian Empire would be great, so long as there was a plentiful supply of worlds to plunder. The conscripted Crusaders would continue to support Mandalore and the clans. However, if they began to struggle, they would squabble and fight between themselves. Ultimately, I believe the Mandalorians would war between themselves and would not be able to stay united, likely resulting in a fractured galaxy run by separate Mandalorian warlords, all claiming to be the true Mandalore. It's Mandalorians' very culture to make war, and without an external threat to face, it's inevitable that they would fight amongst themselves and tear down much of the empire that they'd built. But what do you think of the idea of a Mandalorian empire, and how do you think it would end? Now, this is the final video in our Mandalorian week. I do hope that you've enjoyed. Sorry some of the uploads have been a little all over the place, but I do hope that you did enjoy this, and let me know what you think below. Also, don't forget to like, sub, and share if you have enjoyed, as it really helps the channel grow and is greatly appreciated. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at @TheLoreGuy for regular updates. Thanks for watching, I do hope that you did enjoy, and I'll see you next time.